What's up, beautiful people?
What's up, guys?
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Amanda. This is Steven. And you probably already know that, but we are excited to be jumping into a topic today.
Heck yeah.
That is really important, something that is very near and dear to our hearts, and something that's also carries a lot of weight with it, I think, depending on your background and kind of your experience and relationship with your dad.
Yeah.
The word father can bring to mind a lot of different emotions.
Yes.
And so it can be, I feel like it needs to be a very nuanced and gentle conversation because there can be a lot of joy associated with that. There can be a lot of grief associated with that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of us have kind of a mixed story, maybe some highs and some lows. And so we wanted to jump right in and kind of share maybe a few statistics, but we have our own personal stories to bring to the table as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Father's Day coming up pretty quick, depending on when you're listening to this. It may have already happened, but felt like it was a good time. So like a great father, we're going to look at some stats. I'm just going to read these off. I've got our handy dandy notes here, but this is from census.gov. So reliable here, not just like internet stats, like when Abraham Lincoln said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet." That's not the case here.
Quote.
It is a great quote. But I'm going to name off a few of these. Children living with a mother only is the second most common U.S. living arrangement, second to living with both parents. That number is doubled since 1968. So that's kind of wild to think about. The number of children living with their father only, although still small, is more than quadrupled between 1968 and 2020. There are 1.8 million solo dads in the world, in the U.S. And then the last, and this is from Modern Gentleman, divorces are one of the leading causes of fatherless homes. So just given that information, we're looking at like a vast variety of experiences and emotions and feelings that people will have with their dads, whether that's because they grew up in a single mom home or a single dad home or whatever that might look like, maybe a blended family kind of thing or adoption. And there's just a whole variety of things. And so we thought we'd start out by just talking about our relationships with our dad.
Yeah.
Dads. We don't have the same dad, although, my father-in-law is very much, and I think my dad is very much a dad to you as well in some ways. So
we have great relationships with our dads now, but we did have really different stories growing up.
Yeah.
And so my parents have been stayed married. So I grew up in a 2-parent home. Yeah. And I had a really close relationship with my dad. He was the one that was always there to talk to if there's anything going on. He was very loving. I say was. He's still very loving.
He is very loving.
He is very loving, very nurturing. Loved his girl so much. Yeah. And so I always felt like I had someone that I could run to, that I could confide in, that I could lean on. And I think that shaped me very drastically, as the adult that I am now, because I had that person in that relationship. So.
Yeah. And in your family, I don't think that there's been any divorce.
It's actually kind of remarkable. Yeah. My entire extended family, grandparents, aunts and uncles, everyone has stayed married. Yeah. So divorce has not really been something that I've been well acquainted with, especially growing up.
Whereas for me, I don't think anybody in my family has stayed together. There are a couple. There are a few that have stayed together, actually. Yeah. But on the whole, a large majority of my side of the family have not stayed together. So that was kind of the norm for me. And then it happened to my parents. They divorced when I was a freshman in high school, and it was pretty brutal for me growing up, and just had a lot of like wounds and issues to work through with my dad. And so, that was a big part of my story. And I think it wasn't really until I grew up as an adult and had children of my own that my dad and I really kind of came to a place where I was able to find a lot of healing, and I consider him a great friend even to me now, not just my dad, but like my friend. Yeah. And so, yeah, I kind of understand sort of the whole gamut in a lot of ways of emotion around the dad sort of subject, because I did have such pain in my life in regards to that. Then your dad, you know, when I met you and started dating you, very much took me under his wing. And
he did. And like, I remember my grandparents and like extended family kind of joking, because my dad had 4 daughters. And so my grandparents would always joke that Stephen, being the first son-in-law, was like the son that he never had, the son he never got. And
it was our wedding shower. I think it was our wedding shower that your grandma asked Charles, "Don't you ever wish you had a boy?" And Charles was like, "I do. I have Stephen. He's my son." Yeah. So I was like, "Ooh," because up to that point, I kind of had thought he wanted me to jump off a bridge, to be honest. And so
I think being the first son-in-law is hard, regardless, because you're the first one to kind of take away one of his daughters, in a sense.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I mean, really, but I think that you felt the heat and the pressure a little bit, but he loved you from the beginning, and I think y'all guys have had a pretty good relationship. So
right, and we've always been very close with your family. My one of the pieces of when your family splits is that it's difficult to kind of keep up with everybody. So when it came to Amanda's side during the holidays or whatever, it was easy because we just go to the one place. Yeah. For us, my dad moved to California. My mom was in Dallas or Oklahoma, depending on where she lived. And so it would always kind of boil down to, okay, who do we visit whenever we're visiting my side of the family, which was very difficult. And so like just by nature of geography, we don't really see my dad as much right now, just because he lives, I mean, it's a 29-hour drive.
It is. Although we're going this
we
summer.
We are going to see him in a couple of weeks.
We've gone a couple of times with the kids and made this like big summer adventure out of it. Yeah. And it's been so special. Yeah. I feel like it has just, I don't know, grown that bond in like a very significant way, because I mean, just getting to go somewhere different, somewhere really cool. Yeah. You know, it's so beautiful where they live, and just
he's in Napa, so there's like wineries everywhere, and you know, there's the ocean is right there, and there's mountains, and he's like a couple hours from Yosemite, a couple hours from Tahoe. Like there's just so much to do.
It's been incredibly special. The kids love to go visit, and I think it's been really cool for me to see the closeness between you and your dad, and how much alike you guys are in so many ways.
It is interesting because I think for so long, just with the wounds that I kind of carried inside, and I'm not saying anything on here that I'm not gonna like air out any dirty laundry or anything like that, but I think a lot of times kids look at their parents and say like, I'm not going to be like that or whatever. And that, I mean, I'm sure our children even do that with some things that we do.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the most healing things that I was able to do as a grown man is really begin to look at my dad and say, no, these are all the things that I'm really glad I'm like you.
Yeah.
My dad gave me my love for movies. My dad gave me my love for music. My dad gave me my love for adventure, for poetry, for all these, for like actual, like proper grammar, you know, like
your sense of humor,
my sense of humor, you know, like I got so much of this from my dad. You know, we would go and he would always say, I'm taking the shortcut, which if you read this book right here, I have a whole chapter. I tell this whole story. You know, the shortcut is never the shortcut. Like we would always end up in the craziest places, and it would always take so much longer but it would give him more time with us to roll the windows down, smoke a cigarette, drink a Coke, and listen to some more music and
enjoy the scenery. Like
and enjoy the
route.
Scenery. Yeah. We started calling it the scenic route rather than the shortcut, because that's a lot more like what it was. And that's very me. Like the like, oh wow, it's so, you know. And so I get that from my dad. And I think that's been so healing for me, is to kind of say, like, these are things that I love about my dad. And these are things that I got from my dad. And to celebrate that, you know?
Yeah. And I think also something that as you get older, you start to recognize is, as adults, you really understand kind of where your parents came from. because obviously no one's perfect. And I think it's interesting to see once you start having your own kids, you recognize like your parents were doing the best that they could with, where they were and what they had. And that's what we're doing too.
Yeah.
And I know that our kids will grow up and say, like, I love you, and there's all these things that I appreciate about you, but there's some things I'm going to do differently.
Right.
And so I think it's just interesting how your perspective changes as you get older, and especially once you become a parent too, because parenting is so difficult. Yeah. And then you add in relational, things, and like divorce. I can't imagine as a kid how that feels going through divorce, but I'm sure, it must be heartbreaking for parents too, to witness their kids struggling as they go through something like that.
And even talking to my dad now, I flew out to California a couple of years ago with Kira, and I just was like, man, it's time. Like, I need to have like a heart to heart and just come to like some sort of peace over what happened when I was in high school, and just getting to talk through those things with my dad and hear his perspective and hear his story, it was just so healing, because you do really realize it's like, oh yeah, like I felt this way when that was going on, but you felt this way when it was, and it's just never as black and white or as easy as we can sometimes want to make it. Even if easier is more painful, it's however your young mind is trying to make sense of it. And you don't really realize how much of that you carry with you into adulthood and into marriage and into being a dad. And so I think that was one of the most healing things that I've ever been able to do, is just sit in my dad's truck with him and drive through the vineyards of Napa Valley and just talk. And so, yeah, I think the beauty of that is that for all of you guys who maybe have a similar story, or there's something like that with you and your view of your dad, or even maybe in your own heart of like not feeling like you're measuring up as a dad, like there's so much grace for that, because like I turned out, I mean, it's debatable, but I think I turned out pretty good. I think I turned out pretty good. And so like the failures or the mess ups or the mistakes that my dad made did not define him. It did not define me. It did not define our relationship ultimately. Like that wasn't the end. That wasn't final. And in the end, it really did refine us and make us friends now. And I call him all the time, and he's doing YouTube as well, and he's doing a weight loss journey as well, and we have all these things that we can connect about now, because we both said we're going to humble ourselves, we're going to drop our pride, we're going to be willing to have the hard conversations, and we're gonna come together and like really rediscover that love of being father and son. And I think that was really great. It
really is.
I'm really looking forward to seeing him in a couple weeks, and for the kids to get to see him.
I think everyone's super excited to go.
Yeah. And then there's the whole other aspect of adoption, and we obviously have 3 biological kids and 4 adopted kids, and that might be someone's story who's listening as well. And I think that that's such a huge dynamic shift in a child's life, to maybe not have a dad in the picture even from the beginning, or various ways that happens. But
it's been an interesting conversation for our kids, and we've kind of said all along we don't really share our adopted children's stories from before they came into our family, because there's some trauma there, and all adoption starts with loss, so that's going to be traumatic no matter what. But we really wanted our kids to be able to have that privacy, that is their story, that if they want to talk about it and share, they can. But we always want them to feel open, that they can talk to us about it, and that they know their story, and that there's no secrets, there's nothing hidden. And we kind of follow their lead on that, in the ways that they feel comfortable, and that looks different over the years.
Yeah, and it looks different for each kid too.
Right,
like
that's so true.
Their level of comfort to ask questions. Some of them will feel like, if I ask about this, does it seem like I'm ungrateful or that I'm struggling or whatever? And we just want to always be so like open to talk with them, and honest with them, and transparent with them, and also just encouraging to them.
Yeah.
So.
So our daughter that was adopted from China, she loves to talk about her life in China before she came into our family. She likes to talk about those questions about birth parents and birth father and that kind of thing. And so we get to have these really meaningful conversations with her and with our sons as well. It's something that we talk on and off, but it's a very different dynamic. And it just reminds me like there's so much pain that can come with that word, because there's so many people that have gone through grief with their own fathers, whether that's losing a father or having an estrangement or, or abuse even. That can be very, very challenging for people. And so my heart really goes out to people who have walked kind of that broken path, because it can be so heartbreaking, but there is so much hope for healing. We've seen it in your relationship, and we see that continually in our children's stories as well. And so I'm really grateful that I get to see some beauty coming out of
absolutely
the pain.
Yeah. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of being an adoptive parent is the ability to look your child in the eye and tell them, I choose you. I chose you. I wanted you.
Yeah.
I love you. No matter what, nothing you can say or do will change that. Nothing can change your status as my son. I am here. As my daughter, I am here. I will be for you. I will protect you. I will defend you. And I am proud of you. Yeah. And I think like that, the ability to hear those words is such a key part of being a dad. Like that you put that on your child's heart as often as you probably, whether they're biological or adopted. Honestly, the most powerful thing a dad can tell his son or his daughter is, I'm proud of you. I am proud of you. Nothing, like, we all long for that, and whenever there's that, you call it the father wound or daddy issues or whatever that thing might be, at its core, it's that there's a desire, an innate desire and longing to hear your dad say, I mean, look at Jesus. Like if we're Christians, and one of my favorite stories in the Bible is Jesus is being baptized. And when he comes out of the water, the voice from heaven says, this is my son with whom I'm well pleased. Like essentially God, one of the first things, the way he endorses his son is to say, that's my boy. I'm proud of him. I think there's so much power in that. And I think that's my primary role as a dad, is not just to protect, not just to provide, not just to lead and guide, but to really be like my kid's biggest like encourager, biggest hype man, biggest believer, cheerleader, whatever that might be, to say, I see you, you're uniquely made, I love you, I want you, I choose you, I'm for you, and I'm proud of you. Yeah. And, that, I think the more, and that, you may not have that be your like natural bent, but man, I'll tell you, natural or unnatural, I feel like that's so powerful.
Yeah. It's what every kid
if you
really
can train that. Yeah, exactly. It's what every heart longs for, whether you're a daughter or a son, is to hear their father say, I'm so proud of you. And that was a big moment for me. I remember I was a grown man. I had 5 kids at the time. I'm pretty sure we had Ethan already.
Yeah.
And I called my dad on Father's Day. Amanda was down in Texas. I was home by myself waiting for you to come home. I can't remember exactly what the reason you were down there for was, but I'm just alone at the house. I'm talking to my dad and he just said, I'm so proud of you, son. And I just started weeping, like bawling my eyes out, because I was like, yeah, like I long to hear those words, even as a grown man. Like it's so much like written on my soul to need that affirmation, to need that longing from my dad. And it's not to say, like, that's not to diminish the role of a mom.
No. Because kids need to hear that from their mom.
They need it from both.
But there's something very powerful and very unique to the father relationship with kids. And especially you see when that relationship is not there. Yeah. How much it hurts.
Right.
So that's so powerful.
Yeah. It is interesting that in the U.S., and maybe it's not always been this way, but I think a lot of us kind of would look back at our childhood, and maybe our memories are that our dad was not as present or as engaged or whatever that thing might be. And I mean, even I joke about this a lot. Like, we watched The Christmas Story, and the dad is just like, tell the kid to take it. And then he tells the mom to tell the kid, he's parenting vicariously through his wife, through the mom. And he's like, his job was be the breadwinner, provide, and that was it, And I think right now it's so interesting because it feels to me like, I'm very grateful for this, that the days of the dad's job is to provide, make the income, have the job, and the mom's job is to raise the kids, cook, clean, all of that. Like those sort of, stereotypical gender roles, the lines are very blurred.
Yeah.
Dads are I'm so encouraged by this because when I look around, I feel like I see dads are so much more involved than they used to be.
Right.
Dads are so much more engaged than they used to be. And
I think because it just shows how much kids really benefit from that when both parents are involved in pouring into kids. And I think that would be probably one of the greatest roles of a dad, is to be present.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard. I feel like in this day and age, we've kind of moved away from those traditional roles where the dad's maybe not as present and engaged, but he took care of the finances and all that. Now I think dads are a lot more engaged, but there's also more competing for your attention.
Right.
And it can be really hard to be really purposeful in making time with your kids and engaging them, and not just physically being present, but mentally and emotionally being present. That makes such a difference for kids.
Yeah.
But there's so many things going on in the modern world that pull you all these different ways, and including technology and your phone, right? It's so hard to turn it all off.
It is. And one of the things that I've tried to say is, I heard a guy, a good friend of mine, talk about how his dad would always say to him, I'm going to give you the dignity of my eyes. I don't want this to be the most common, view you see. Right. The top of my head. I want you to have the dignity of my eyes. I'm not perfect at that by any stretch of the imagination.
None of us are.
I don't think a lot of people are. There's just something so addicting about this. And, we talk a lot about make sure this isn't your mistress. Don't let your phone be your home wrecker. And it can be so easy for that to happen. Or for you, your mister. What is the what, man whore? I don't know. What's the word you would say for? But we're very intentionally engaged about hopefully not in a way that puts the other down, because we both know we both do it.
Right.
But you'll just say, hey, why don't you check out from your phone and check in with us. And I know that's my cue. Oh, I've been on my phone a little more than I should be right now, or I've been too involved in work, or I've been too involved in whatever. I need to really be present, and not just physically present, but emotionally present. I think that's a huge part of it too, because I'll remember back when I was a kid, and these are the things that stick with me. That's why I'm so passionate about it. The internet had just come out, and this makes me sound really old, probably for some people, but
back in those days,
we had this Commodore 64 computer and the dial-up kind of thing where you have to, and you can't use the phone when the internet's being used, and so Dad would be on the computer a ton, and I just remember thinking this is before cell phones. I'd just walk in, Dad's on the computer, and I'd be like, okay. And I know not to bug him and not to bother him or whatever. And I love that I understand that more now as an adult than I did as a kid.
It's easy to get distracted.
It gives me so much more grace for my dad, because I see that in me, and my kids see that in themselves now too. So
technology is addicting. And it's only getting harder with, more and more that comes out. I think an important thing for us is creating healthy boundaries and being able to sit down and say, okay, here is where we draw the line to make sure that we're protecting time together, that is intentional, that we're connecting, that's not in front of the TV or with cell phones or laptops or that kind of thing, because it can be so easy to just get sucked into that, and the entire day goes by.
Yeah.
And you haven't really talked and
You have
connected
no
much.
clue, and then it's just like gone.
Yeah. And it's especially heartbreaking as you see your kids growing up so fast.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you're staying engaged in their lives and hearing from them. And like with teenagers, that's a little bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, you want to make sure that they continue to open up to you and talk to you. And
when they do feel heard, you know, whenever they
Yeah.
do open up to you, they feel like you're hearing them and that you are caring about what they're saying. And,
yeah, it's a mentality shift. It really is, to be present
yeah.
mentally, to where your kids know, like, my parents hear me, they see me, they understand.
I matter to them. I'm important to them.
They're not just making a couple of minutes to talk to me and then going about the rest of their day.
Right.
Like, making sure that that is the priority is so important, and something that's, I think, a daily struggle for all parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Man, it's such a wild time to be raising kids, and it's such a wild time to be trying to just stay undistracted in your life, you know, because there's so much going on all the time. So I'm just so great. And it does make me grateful too, for the guys. And this is, you know, for me, this was such a huge part of my healing and my being raised, is that even though my dad wasn't really around as much when I was in high school, I had lots of guys, lots of mentors and men who were willing to kind of step into that role. And, you know, your dad being one of them later on in high school, but my youth pastor was one of those guys. They were the deacons of our church, you know, there were times we were dead broke, like just completely broke. My mom was a teacher working full time, you know, as an entry-level high school teacher, making beans, you know, and I was trying to work as well to help provide. But there were times where we wouldn't have groceries. We wouldn't know what we were going to do. And we'd come home and, like, the deacons of our church would have bought us a bunch of groceries and left them on our doorstep. Thankfully, nothing perishable, because it's Texas heat. But like, that would be like a huge way that, like, the men in our lives would step in and sort of a fatherly type role to make sure that we were being cared for and protected and provided for. And that left such a huge impression on me of the kind of man that I wanted to be, not just as a dad, but like as just a man in general, that I would be willing to pour myself into younger men and be sort of that father role for them. I think that made such a huge impression on me. And so, like, if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, and that's you, man, I just want to say thank you. Like, Charlie, Youth Pastor Charlie, if you're listening to this, thank you. You know, Tom, if you're listening to this, thank you. Jim, if you're watching this from heaven, thank you. Darren, if you know, Jim. All these guys, like, they just said, you know what, I'm going to pour into this guy, and I'm going to take, I don't know if they would have ever said I'm taking on a fatherly role,
right?
But to me, looking at them in that way, it did shape me in ways that I could never even quantify.
Yeah,
you know?
It's absolutely true. There's something to be said about mentorship, because it is, in a lot of ways, it can be the only father type role that a child receives, you know? And so I know for you that made a world of difference. Like, these men are just incredible, and they have poured into you in so many ways. So I'm so grateful for the men that see a need, or they see someone that they can pour into, and they step up and they do that, because it's life-changing. Yeah,
absolutely. So, you know, Father's Day's here, or we're just past. I think it's probably kind of fitting this time of year, because it can be so difficult for so many. I thought we could kind of go two routes here. Like, route number one, how do you honor your dad? You know, with the world of social media on Father's Day, like, everyone's going to write a post about their dad, and they're going to, you know, and you're going to see that, and that might be painful, but I wonder if there's a way to sort of redeem that, or even just intentionally use that to honor your dad. And in doing so, to kind of find healing in your own heart. So that's, you know, kind of one way I think we could go with this. And so for me, I know, like, that was a place that I was at a while back, was like, okay, I really want to honor my dad on Father's Day. And it was actually such a fun experiment and like activity to do, to just write out all the ways that I'm like my dad.
Yeah.
And to write out all the things that I love about my dad. Mm-hmm. And to write out all the great experiences that I had with my dad. Mm. And like, you may be listening to this and man, I feel like you have a lot of that, and that's okay. Like, it's okay. But I think it's just the exercise of trying that's so helpful and so healing. And then maybe you're not in that place and you don't have the ability to do that. Mm. Is there a man in your life who sort of stepped into that role that you can do that for? You know, yeah. My dad wasn't in the picture, or I don't know my dad, or, but there's this guy. Maybe it's your stepdad, maybe it's your grandpa, maybe it's your uncle, maybe it's your youth leader, maybe it's your pastor, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach, or, I mean, there's a variety of people that I would hope you could sort of take inventory and stock in your life and just begin to sort of build gratitude into your rhythm for that person, and then maybe just take some time to write it down.
There's something really powerful about that.
There's something powerful about that, and there's something healing about that, and something even freeing about that. Like, what can happen so often, it happened to me for sure, is that we can sort of spiral into this victim thing where we're like, oh, there was no good. And we sort of rewrite history and remember things differently. And yet, like, that doesn't really bring a lot of joy or life or freedom to have that mentality or that approach. So to take that and like very actively fight against that and say, no, these were the great things. And remember that. That's not washing over the hard stuff. That's not like trying to like move on or forget or rewrite history or anything like that. It's just saying, if even just for one day, I could think about things that truly did impact me in a positive way and that I can be grateful for, I feel like that can be so redeeming.
It is really interesting how they can both coexist. You can have joy and you can have grief.
Exactly.
You can be working through difficult things and still so appreciative of the good things.
Yeah.
Whether that's in your own life or in a relationship. I think that being able to recognize that and hold both of those is really important.
It's a tension for sure.
Yeah.
It is a tension, but like life is tension, and I think it's a good thing to practice that, to practice that tension and to hold it in humility and gratitude as much as you can.
You see that in pretty much every area of life. There's really no area that isn't going to be touched by brokenness.
Yeah.
But also that there's probably some sort of thing in that you can find gratitude for.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's not like a toxic positivity, like, oh no, everything is great, there's nothing bad.
Right.
I think being able to fully recognize and wrestle with both.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other route is like, I think a lot of people try to think, what's something I can give my dad for Father's Day? What's something I can do to show him I love him? What's some way I can tell him I'm proud of him? Those kinds of things. And like, that's kind of tough, like, because each dad is so different. You don't want to like stereotype your dad and be like, well, let's get him a tool set.
I was literally thinking
or whatever, because like for me, that wouldn't be it. Like, so I would say this is the question we get a lot. Like, what can I give my dad? What does your dad love? And if you don't know the answer to that question, the gift to your dad is to sit down with him and just get to know him, like, cause a lot of times that you live with someone so long, you don't really know who they are anymore, and that's true of our parents as well. Like I could be married to you for 19 years and not have any clue what to buy you for Christmas. Yeah. But if I just listen to you and I just ask you questions and I just try to get to know you on a daily basis, that becomes a lot easier. Right. And it's the same with our parents. So like my kids would know, well, dad's not going to care so much if I get him like, a tool set, but he would love if I asked him to have a daddy-daughter date with me to go watch, Thor, Love and Thunder or whatever. Like I would totally be like, that's my love language. And my kids know that,
Or massage coupons.
Or massage coupons. I'll walk on your back.
Yeah.
Or leather. Like
My dad
Amanda bought
doesn't
me
like
like this
that.
leather cup holder like thing. That's just like the most amazing thing. Like I love leather. So like that was like one of the most thoughtful, amazing gifts that I've ever received was that. Like what are those things that just, the reason I loved that so much is because I knew you were listening to me. You knew, you know, he likes leather. He likes coffee. I'm going to get him this cup holder that's leather and it's rad, you know, kind of
Goes
thing.
back to the whole being present and being intentional with your relationships.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, it's not really what you do.
Yeah.
It's about letting that person know that you care in a very intentional way.
Yeah.
And so everyone has their different ways that they give and receive love.
Yeah.
But I think that when you are making it known that you care and you're there and you're listening, that's what really matters.
Yeah. And then I would say, depending on where you are in life, a phone call rather than a text, rather than a Facebook, you know, message or a Facebook wall post or an Instagram, whatever. Call your dad. Like call him on the phone. I don't care if you don't like talking on the phone. I don't care if he doesn't like talking on the phone. Better yet, FaceTime him.
I was going to say FaceTime is the thing now.
If you have children, really FaceTime him and make sure all your kids are saying Happy Father's Day, you know, or, you know, Happy Grandpa's Day, whatever. Like we do. And my kids on Father's Day, they call my dad, Pappy. We call Papa. If we're not hanging out with one of them, we'll call him, we'll FaceTime him, and we'll just spend time talking, you know? And that's such a huge gift. Like I love when my kids call me and want to talk to me. I love when my kids text me and want to just tell me things. Like Reese a couple of weeks ago, just out of nowhere, my oldest daughter texted and said, I love you, Dad. That's all I wanted to say. Like, oh, I was like,
It's going to make me cry.
this is like everything. Like I want so much to like, I want my children to know that I adore them, and I want them to, I want to know that they adore me as well. And part of that is just telling them, you know, don't forget your dad on Father's Day.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, is like just the way that you as a parent pour into your kid and teach them and train them. That's something that I think is really important and something that we've tried to do. You know, each year I tell the kids, like, I want you to either sit down and like write a note or a letter, something thoughtful, like spend some time thinking about how much you love your dad and the ways that you love him, the ways that you've connected with him. And so a lot of years they'll either have written a letter to Stephen, or maybe sometimes we'll make a video and let each of the kids kind of share and talk to the camera and just be like, hey Dad, just wanted to tell you, you know. And I think that those are some of the things that will carry on through the years. I'm
more sentimental, like I very in touch with my emotional feminine side or whatever, and that like speaks to me so much. But I think across the board,
words of affirmation
are so key for every man and every woman. It's the longing of our hearts is to be told, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, Dad, coming from my kid. Like that means a lot to me whenever my kids say that, you know? So those are some easy little Father's Day snippets for you guys. I know it can be a complicated holiday, but I think also that it can be a very healing holiday at the same time. So whether you're listening to this after Father's Day and you're looking in retrospect, or you're saying, oh shoot, I forgot to call my dad on Father's Day, it's never too late. Like it's never too late to call your dad, even if it's June 22nd, you know, and Father's Day was a few days ago or whatever. Like you can still call your dad and talk to him. Like that's the beauty of it. It's like, this is a holiday. These are just like landmarks to like remind you to do things, you know? Yeah. So I love that.
I love it too.
Well, we do a weekly segment on our podcast, the What's Up Beautiful segment, where each week we talk about something that some beautiful person has done that is beautiful. And this week, we're going to be talking about a mom named Eden Kim, who shared a touching video on TikTok thanking her husband for ensuring she gets 8 hours of sleep a night. What a guy. Even if that means he only gets 4. Talk about a good dad right there. That's called taking one for the team.
Seriously, no.
He told her, there are many birds burdens you carry that I cannot. The burdens of pregnancy, the burdens of childbirth, breastfeeding, lack of sleep is the only burden I can take from you. So why wouldn't I? So we're going to include that in the show notes for you guys to take a look at that. But that's a huge deal. That's so awesome.
Story. I think every woman out there can appreciate that. That's incredible.
Yeah. So thank you, Jonathan Kim, for being an example to all of us. And we're going to watch that. But we love you guys. And so thank you so much for watching our podcast. If you've not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe, whether you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you're watching us on the Family Made channel on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. As always, you can follow us on Instagram. We're on all the places at the Miller Fam, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, except Twitter's the Miller Fam 2, because we couldn't get the Miller Fam. Maybe if you know anybody at Twitter who can get us the real one, that would be great. But we love to keep up with you guys, so make sure you do that. And until next time, we will see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.